Hello, my name is Connor McBrien, and I will be giving a brief presentation on the Linux operating system. What is Linux? Linux is an open source operating system derived from the original Unix operating system developed by AT&T and Bell Laboratories. In the early 1990s, a man named Linus Torvald took the Unix operating system and further developed it into the Linux operating system we know today. Since then, it has undergone many developmental changes and split off into a variety of flavors, such as Ubuntu, Debian, Mint, and many more. Linux is quickly growing in popularity in the tech field due to its high portability, flexibility, and configurability. It is the most popular non-desktop operating system and is quickly growing in the desktop sector as well. Why use Linux? Firstly, Linux is open source, therefore the user can not only view the base code, but change it as they see fit. This makes it incredibly popular amongst computer scientists and software developers who want exact control over their development environment. Since it is highly configurable, it is also ideal for things like embedded systems and servers, which only need to do very specific tasks and need a lightweight operating system. Linux experience is highly desirable in the technology sector due to its increasing use in emerging technologies. Therefore, it is very valuable to learn. The basics. The Linux operating system can effectively be broken down into four key components. The kernel, the core operating system, the shells, which are programs that allow the user to interact with the kernel, the Linux file system, which is how the files and their permissions are stored, and commands, which is the language a user uses to interact with the system. The kernel. The kernel is the core operating system of Linux. The kernel interfaces directly with hardware and is important for standard operating system tasks such as task scheduling, file management, and memory management. The user can directly interact with the kernel and therefore interact directly with the hardware if they so choose, using the Linux terminal and shells. Although it is not always advised to do so, as interacting directly with the kernel can have unforeseen effects on the system. Linux shells. A Linux shell is essentially a program that allows the user to interact directly with the system via commands. The user accesses a shell by using the Linux terminal and opening a new shell using an sh or any shell command. The user can manually navigate through the operating system as well as the file system and gain direct control over this computer and its resources. There are numerous shells that a user can use. However, the most popular or most common are usually sh, which is the bourne shell, and the bash shell, which is the bourne again shell. The bash shell is most notably used for bash scripting, which allows a user to script their computer into running high-level commands repetitively. Shells can also grant the user special permissions outside of their normal permission range. If a user has restricted permissions but does open a shell somehow, they can gain root access to the computer, which grants them access to all of the system's resources. The Linux file system is derived from the Unix file system. It is designed in a tree-like fashion, so there are folders that contain subfolders all the way down to files themselves. The most common types of files in the system are directories and standard files. However, there are also links, sockets, pipes, and special files. These last four are used for specific and unique interactions amongst files in the system. Each file in the system is assigned a variety of permissions. There are user permissions, group permissions, and other permissions, as well, and each of these has a subtype called read, write, and execute. User permissions are permissions specific to the current user. Group permissions are specific to a group on the system that a user can belong to. And other permissions are general permissions usually available to everyone on the system. The subcategories read, write, and execute. Read permissions allow a user to read the program, write or read the file. Write allows the user to write to the file, and execute allows the user to execute the file if it is classified as an executable. There are thousands of Linux commands, but here are some of the most common ones used for navigating the system. ls, this displays all files in a current directory. ls and many other Linux commands can receive extra input to further specify the action performed. ls space -al will display further information about all the files in the system, as seen in the bottom left corner. cd changes directories. This is one of the core commands for navigating the system. cd space -- will take a user to a parent file, and cd space folder name will take the user to a subfolder. grep is a very powerful searching command. grep is very powerful because it has a variety of accepted inputs and can be comboed with other Linux commands to create incredibly powerful searching results. Man is one of the most powerful Linux commands in the system. Man followed by any Linux command will bring up a man page, which is internal documentation on the system of the functionality of said command along with acceptable inputs. Help is very similar to man. It pulls up less information, is more easily accessible in a terminal. Lastly, these are the resources I used for my research. The TLDP is the Linux Documentation Project. It is the largest volunteer organization dedicated to documentation of Linux. Since Linux is open source, there is no official documentation except for that done by nonprofits and by volunteers themselves. I also use the Wikipedia, although it is still considered an unreliable source by most resource papers. It serves as a good summary of the history and development of Linux, as well as links to various other official documents and sources. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.